Hello, boys and girls. Today in Social Studies, we need you to get your Social Studies textbook, and you need to please turn to page 246. Turn to page 246 in your Social Studies textbook. So maybe you need to pause the video and do that. Have your teacher pause the video, get your books, and turn to page 246, please. Okay. Now we're going to review some things you learned with Mrs. Harriger last time. We're going to go over that, some different freedoms, and then we'll go over some new vocab words today. Okay, so with Mrs. Harriger, you read about freedom of religion. Freedom of religion. Now we're very lucky to live in the United States of America, because in the United States you have freedom of religion, and that means church. You can go to any church you want to. You get to pick the one you want to go to. So you may go to one church and your friend goes to a different church, and that's okay. Or you may choose not to go to church, but that is your choice because you have that freedom in the United States. In other countries, they are not so lucky. They are told which church they have to go to, or perhaps they are not allowed to go to church. But in the United States, one of our freedoms is freedom of religion. When you think freedom of religion, think church. Okay, Mrs. Harriger also talked about freedom of speech. Okay, we also have freedom of speech in the United States. Now, in the freedom of speech, you think about talking or saying something. You are allowed to do that. You can give your opinion, you can talk and say things in the United States, as long as you don't harm anyone, but you can do that. Again, we are so lucky we can do that in the United States of America. In some countries you can't. You could get in trouble for certain things that you say. But we have freedom of speech in the United States. Think of speech, talking or saying something. Okay. Another freedom that we have is freedom to gather together. I apologize, that was there. Freedom of assembly. Okay, we have freedom of assembly. Now, when you think freedom of assembly, think gather together. Now, we used to be able, you could go down to the gym and we'd have an assembly down there. The whole school could go down there maybe for a Christmas program or a special event. So we all gather together. So when you think freedom of assembly, think gather together. We have the right to do that. That is a freedom that we have. Okay? And then the last one is freedom of the press. We have freedom of the press. Now the press has to do with the news. Okay, so you might think media. Freedom of the press, think media. Newspaper, radio, television, film. Reading or writing something in the newspaper. Telling the news, telling the true story. For freedom of the press, you want the facts though. Freedom of the press, you want newspaper, radio, television. Telling the news. That's freedom of the press. They're allowed, the freedom of the press, they're allowed to tell those true stories. Okay, so those are the things you talked about, Mrs. Harriger. Now today, we're going to read with some new vocab words in there. We're going to read, and one of the vocab words would be elect. So everyone say elect. Okay, when you elect someone, you choose someone. Okay, when you elect, you make a choice. And we also have ballot. Everyone say ballot, ballot. Now for ballot, that is what you vote on. You make your choice on it, on a big piece of paper, almost like, looks like a big cardboard paper. But a big piece of paper, and you have choices. You might have a list of different names on there, and then you vote for the one that you want, okay, on a ballot. And then the whole process of voting for what you want, maybe an issue, but the whole time set aside for voting is called an election. So everyone say election. Now when we vote, boys and girls, we have something called majority rule. Say majority rule. Majority rule is the most votes, then they get what they want. So it could be something very simple. Let's say your class is going to have a party and you have time to play a game. So the teacher lets you vote. Would you rather play Heads Up 7 Up or do you want to play Sparkle? So the class votes. Most of the kids vote they want to play Heads Up 7 Up. So if most of the people vote for that, that's the majority, then they get what they want. So then they get to play that game. So majority rule is most of the people, more than half of the voters vote for that. So then you get what you want. But just because you didn't vote for that, you still have minority rights. Okay, so you didn't vote for it, but you still have rights in the United States. You still get to do those things. You're still protected and not mistreated. You still have rights, even though you didn't vote the same as the majority. Okay, so that's called minority rights. All right, boys and girls, so you should have had time to turn to page 246 in your Social Studies textbook. So 246 in your Social Studies textbook, the heading is Citizens Make Choices right there. Citizens Make Choices. And I will make mine larger. Even though I know you have it in front of you, I like to make it a little larger for you. So citizens make choices. Okay? Because citizens also have the right to vote for their leaders. Make sure you're following along. Voting allows them to make choices in their government. To vote, people must be at least 18 years old. Yes, in our United States, you need to be 18 years old to vote. So when you turn 18, you should register to vote. That means you go sign up to vote. And it's very important that you do that. It's very important that you vote. They must also, we'll go back here, they must also meet any other requirements their state may have. By voting, citizens help elect or choose their government's leaders. Okay, so elect means to choose your government's leaders. Many go to special voting places on the day of an election. Yes, we don't all go to the same place. You go where, depending on where you live, you go to a special place to vote. An election is a time set aside for voting. So they might pick a special day. Special day might be November 2nd. Okay, November 2nd is going to be our voting day, and that's when we go to our special places and vote. An election is a time set aside for voting. Then voters mark their choice on a paper ballot, okay, or a ballot shown on a voting machine. A ballot lists all the possible choices in an election. So there could be different choices in an election, okay, and you mark what you want. There could be different names. Say voting for president could say Donald Trump, and it could say Joe Biden, and then on the ballot you pick the one you want. Or you could have choices on there that you would vote for different things in the community. Each citizen's vote in an election is kept secret. Only the results are announced. This way, people can vote without worrying about what other people may think of their choices. So when you vote, you don't have to tell anybody who or what you voted for. Some people may do that and talk about it with their family, but you don't have to. In the United States, it's a secret vote, so no one can be upset with you or with who you vote for. You have the right to vote for who you want. So also on this page, up here in the corner, there's a picture, and then the words below it, the caption, says voters must register or sign up to vote. So voters register to vote. You sign up ahead of time, and it's so many days before the election. You can't go the day before the election and sign up. But maybe a month or two or several months before the election, you sign up, you show who you are, where you live, so that you can vote legally in the area where you live. So you register, and then later you get to go vote. Down at the bottom, the picture has a caption here that goes with this picture. It says, at a voting booth, people can make their choices without anyone seeing it. That again is the secret ballot. You are allowed to vote for who you want in the United States and nobody can see it. You can see as they're standing at these booths and no one can see what they're doing on that piece of paper. You fill that out, you take that and you give it to someone to put in a machine. The machine counts the votes and then you're on your way. You do not put your name on the ballot. Nobody knows who you voted for. Okay? It shows people voting here, standing at these booths. And then down below there, it shows people in line then to have their turn to vote. Okay? So voting is a very, very important thing to do. Okay? It's part of being a good citizen in the United States, really. It's a right that we have in our country that other people in other countries, they don't get to do that. Okay, look on page 247 now. The heading says majority rules and minority rights. It says when more than half of the voters vote in the same way, they are the majority. A majority rule, these people rule, or get what they want. The voters who did not vote for the winner are the minority. However, the Constitution protects the rights of the people in the minority. This idea is called minority rights. It helps keep people from being mistreated. Okay? So even though you didn't vote a certain way, you still have rights in the United States. Now, this picture over here, it shows a ballot. See, the person has a pen. So they have where you would fill in sometimes a little oval shape, or you would fill in a line to show who you would vote for. Voters do not put their names on their ballots. You just fill it in, who you want to vote for, what you want to vote for, and you turn it in. You put it in a machine. Once you turn it in, nobody knows what you voted for, but you had the opportunity to vote. It's very important that you know in the United States we have that right to vote. And it's a very important thing, okay? All right, boys and girls. Okay, boys and girls, I wanted to show you this is a sample ballot, okay? I wanted you to get an understanding of how you can vote. So let's say you wanted to vote for this person. You would color in right there, that rectangle, you would color that in. Now, not all ballots look the same. Okay, this one's a little different where you're coloring in the oval shape beside who you want to vote for. And it'll tell you only vote for one candidate, that kind of thing. But ballots look different. On this one, you're coloring in, you would shade in with your pen or your marker, you would shade in that arrow to show who you want to vote for. So it gives you a little example there of what a ballot might look like. Okay? I would expect you to vote when you're older, so you'll understand then what it might look like. So let's review what we read a little bit. There's minority rights. Minority rights means even though you didn't vote the way the majority did, you still have rights and you're not mistreated, you are protected, and you still have rights in the United States. Majority rule means more than half of the votes. If more than half of the people vote for one thing, that's the majority, and that's what you will get. Okay. We talked about election. So an election is a time set aside to go and vote in a special place. We talked about ballot, which I just showed you what a ballot may look like. The ballot is the paper that you vote on to choose your leaders, or perhaps vote on something going on in the community, maybe voting on getting a new school, or new taxes, or new things like that that help the community. And then we talked about elect. When you elect someone, you make a choice. When you elect something, you're making a choice for something that you want. And then again, the freedoms that you learned. You have the freedom of the press, which freedom of the press goes along with the media, the news stories. That's freedom of the press. Okay, and then we talked about freedom of assembly. Freedom of assembly is when you can gather together. Freedom of assembly, you gather together. And then we have, of course, freedom of speech, where you're allowed to give your opinion. You are allowed to say and talk about things that you believe. You're allowed to do that and talk about that as long as you don't hurt anybody. In the United States, you have freedom of speech. And another great reason that we're lucky to live in our country, we have freedom of religion. You get to pick which church you want to go to, okay? You don't have to go to church. You could go to one church, and your teacher or your friends go to another church, and that's okay. We have that freedom. Whereas in other countries, they don't have that freedom. Okay, so freedom of religion, think church. All right, boys and girls, thank you for following along. And just keep working on your social studies. Keep working on those vocabulary words. Have a wonderful day.